22nd of August 2023. And I'd like to welcome you all here this evening. Welcome members of the public gallery. I'd like to acknowledge that tonight we're meeting on the lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and pay our respects to elders past, present, and acknowledge that tonight we're dealing with the naming or co-naming of Wandoulia Banks Reserve, which is a pretty good step forward for us, something we've been intending to deal with for some time now. In terms of apologies, members on leave of absence, we do have Councillor Ross Iopolo on a leave of absence. Otherwise, we have all council members in attendance this evening. So I'll go straight to public question time and receiving of public statements. Welcome to you all. Most of you look familiar, but there may be one or two who haven't been here before. So if you haven't and you'd like to come up and say something, there's no set order. We just ask that you approach the microphone, that you state your name, the suburb that you reside in, and the item that you're speaking to council on this evening. And we do time to 3 minutes. So public question time is open. So what are we asking people to shout this evening, are we, CEO? Yep, that's great. Thanks, Jocelyn.
Become a council member for the day.
Come and join us. Experience it for yourself. We've got an election coming up, so there's a good opportunity to give it a go. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you. All right. Leslie Flory, 79 Sathab, Mount Hawthorn. Good evening, Mayor Cole and councillors. On the 13th of December 2022, the City of Vincent provided information on the Drainage Technical Memorandum, whereby the City of Vincent was to spend $425,000 for GHG to capture data, drainage data. Peter Varos advised there was a procurement process to undergo in respect to the project work and a report available in March/April 2023. 9 months has now passed and residents remain in the dark and uninformed. In keeping with the City of Vincent's values being transparent, open and accountable, I have a number of questions I would like a direct answer to. Questions. What are the results of the City of Vincent's findings from the GHG data collected? What project work will take place to rectify the failing stormwater pipes and drainage system? When is the City of Vincent going to be transparent and inform these residents and ratepayers of how serious this matter is? As quoted in the Drainage Technical Memorandum, risk is high. I quote, there is a large amount of drainage infrastructure which runs through private property, some of which is not accessible. Question, is the City of Vincent going to contact these residents who have stormwater pipes running through and across their properties? Question, easement cost incurred by myself. Is the City of Vincent going to reimburse my cost for the creation of an easement over the city-owned stormwater pipe running through my property? This easement was created to protect the City of Vincent asset. If you're not going to reimburse this cost, would the city object to the cancellation of this easement? Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Would the next speaker like to join us at the table?
Hello, Louise Schneider, Harold Street, Mount Lawley. On behalf of the Harold Street Action Group, we'd like to address item 10.2, Harold Street Black Spot Project. Regarding the council agenda tonight, I would like to address specifically recommendation 3, council applying to Main Roads to fund a one-way conversion of Harold Street from Vincent Street to Beaufort Street. The council is fully aware of the residents' positive support of this recommendation and the strong reasons driving the request. We acknowledge that our portion of Harold Street is not the only area in the precinct with traffic management issues. We do, however, request council to consider this as an individual implemented action, that is prior to any other black spot surveys carried out in adjoining areas. It is our view that the proposed change will mitigate the problems already identified and acknowledged, but strike a balance between the City of Vincent's stated strategic goals, such as safe, attractive, welcoming, and usable spaces for residents, and not unduly affect visitors to the area. We note the objections to the proposal, but feel the proposed change will not have a significant detrimental impact, but may in fact encourage or force road users to use the main roads for the purpose of which they are intended. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Louise. Next speaker, please.
Yeah, Linda Harris of Lindaville. My comment relates to item 10.4, the e-scooter trial. I would like to remind the council of a petition that was presented to the council earlier this year. 110 worried residents signed this petition. It reads as follows. We are concerned about the safety of pedestrians walking on the bitumen paths within Britannia Reserve. This is becoming quite dangerous because of the increasing number of speeding cyclists, e-scooters and skateboards. The pedestrians using this park include the elderly, people on mobility scooters and wheelchairs, parents with prams, small children learning to walk, and dog walkers who often have elderly dogs. Many in this group cannot hear the speeding vehicle or move quickly to get out of the way. Some are becoming too frightened to walk in the reserve. We do not have a problem with young children learning to ride as they travel slowly. We respectfully request that large signs be erected at all entrances to the park stating pedestrians only. As I said, this petition was strongly supported by all the park users. Bikes and e-scooters in the reserve were discussed at the council meeting in July. At this council meeting, the council seemed to be under the misapprehension that bikes are at liberty to ride on any footpath. This is incorrect. And I quote the Road Safety Commission. Cyclists of all ages may ride on footpaths in WA unless otherwise signed. Unless otherwise signed. These are important words. The council has the legal right to put up appropriate signage on the footpath in the reserve. There is no legal impediment to this, and many other parks have pedestrian-only signs on the footpaths. Perhaps for clarity, they should add, except for children under 12. As the residents keep saying, children are not a problem. It is the adults and the teenagers. If Vincent adopts this trial of e-scooters, I can only assume that there will be more e-scooters in the suburb, and they will naturally think that Britannia Reserve is a great place to test out the scooters and ride as fast as humanly possible. So I again, on behalf of many concerned residents, request that pedestrian-only signs be placed at the entrance to the reserve as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Just on the e-scooters, because these are actually commercially operated, they do have a lot of parameters in place that we're unable to attach to privately owned scooters. So you can actually geofence areas where they're not permitted. And I would suggest that Britannia would be one of those areas. So that means that scooters simply can't operate in certain zones. They just lose power if people try to take them there. Next speaker, please.
Mari Slythe, 89 Carr Street, West Perth. And I'm pretty sure I got the right item number, but I left it at home. But I've written down 9.5 about, excuse me, about the Pickle District part of the Bunnings thing. Okay, so, and I've got here at the top, submission preserving Pickle District. That's my submission. Yeah. Having reviewed many of the submissions to council regarding the Bunnings takeover of the historic Pickle District and its subsequent approval by the DAP, I find this Bunnings amendment to its original proposal that it is increasing the size and height of the development. I find it very disturbing.
Mari, just to be clear, because I have read your written statement as well, I think that you're referring to the JDAP application to review. So the Pickle District framework is about the Pickle District precinct.
Yes.
But it's not specifically about the amendment to the JDAP approval.
No, but it's going to impact it.
Yeah. So I just wanted to point that out, that we're not considering that amendment to the JDAP approval. That will go to the JDAP meeting.
I understand it will.
Okay.
But I'm just putting it to council basically what our concerns are, the people around me.
That's fine.
Okay. So living in Cleaver Precinct character area, which is across the road, Newcastle Street, from Newcastle Street, we have had to accept the original Bunnings development, but this is still the Pickle District plan as being coupled with the retaining some of the historic characters bits of our Pickle District, but now confronted with this new amendment of Bunnings for a larger and uglier commercial district, something else. We feel we have been conned by Bunnings and will lose the imperative Pickle District early character and the planned art sector altogether, which is going to damage lifestyles of ratepayers beside and adjoining street character area as well, particularly with the anticipated increase in traffic and the on Newcastle Street. And with the changes to the traffic is going to also affect the Pickle District quite dramatically, what's left of it. And so, and also the poor bus drivers that have to utilise that street. So my greatest concern for what's left of the Pickle District is that the traffic situation, unless the okay, so I've written down here, I hope to admin can assure us that it will get assurances from Main Roads and the Department of Traffic definitely completed in full research just as how clogged up the roads around our district will become, because the Pickle District will not benefit. That's the basic. That's it. Okay.
Thank you, Mari. And I'll just make sure, I'll just ask our Director, John Corbellini, I'm not sure if you submitted to the revised application, but if we could include Mari Slythe on the list of people to contact when the JDAP item comes back.
Yes, we'll include that. There will also be a transport assessment included with that amendment. Okay. And we're also doing a separate transport assessment with the Department of Transport for the broader area, the Pickle District and the area of West Perth north of Newcastle Street.
Okay, thanks. The buses go along there too, and they're getting scared about what's going to happen. I've told some of them.
Thank you very much, Mari. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Ashley LaFontaine of North Perth. I'm speaking on item 12.1, the advertising of amended policy number 4.2.12, advisory groups. It is unclear to me how the removal of the provisions from the policy to be captured in each group's terms of reference will impact the effectiveness of the advisory groups in fulfilling their role. For example, it is unclear if a city employee will be assigned to provide administrative support for an advisory group if included in their terms of reference. Therefore, I ask for greater transparency. Is it possible for the administrative framework terms of reference template to be included as part of the community consultation? Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Daniela Merger, Urbanista Town Planning, 231 Bulwer Street, Perth. This evening, I'm here representing the landowner of number 39 Bondi Street, Mount Hawthorn, in support of the officer's recommendation to approve the proposed development. The subject site is zoned residential R30 with a land area of 736 square metres, allowing subdivision into 2 lots, each with a 9.15 metre frontage, which has been approved by the WAPC in November 2022. And I understand our client is currently going through the process to formally create these lots. As I mentioned in my email to you this afternoon, when the architect first came to us with their proposal, we immediately raised concerns with respect to the width of the garages being greater than 50% of the frontage. However, before providing any advice to our client, we reviewed the streetscape context in great detail and evaluated that in this instance, there definitely is merit for the city to approve a variation that they have a strong position on. As detailed in the officer's agenda report, we worked closely with the city's officers through various sets of amended plans and supporting information and 3 DRP meetings to achieve what we consider is a great outcome and, importantly, a recommendation for approval. Based on the queries raised by council at the briefing session last week, I understand that the key concern in this regard is streetscape. Obviously, each streetscape is different and therefore different things are going to enhance or impact different streetscapes. So first we must determine what the context of the streetscape is to establish whether any impact can actually occur or may actually occur. As I mentioned again in my email, Bondi Street is extremely undulating with a slope of approximately 10 metres from east to west and roughly 12 metres from north to south. This significant slope results in lots on the northern side of the street to appear bulky and dominant, whilst lots on the south side appear much smaller when viewed from the street. This in itself represents that there's a different feel to the dwellings on just from one side of the street to the other. In addition, there are a number of lots along Bondi Street that exceed 600 square metres and therefore are capable of subdivision in accordance with the R30 provisions. This is a relatively unique element in Mount Hawthorn more broadly, as almost all of the lots almost all of the R30 lots in Mount Hawthorn are approximately 450 square metres. This is important in the streetscape context, as where subdivision potential exists, smaller lots with narrow frontages can be created, hence resulting in varying built form outcomes. In relation to vehicle access and garages and carports, given no right of way exists behind Bondi Street, all access and parking is off Bondi Street, therefore making garages, carports and parking part of the streetscape. This is evident in the images provided in my email, which outline. Thank you.
We have reached your 3 minutes and we have got your written submission. So do you want to just maybe skip to your concluding comments?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Thanks, Daniela.
Okay. Look, yeah, if everyone's seen my email, but look, whilst I do appreciate the council's views on the streetscape, on balance, the proposal before you this evening has been carefully designed and fine-tuned with the city's officers and the DRP to respond to the planning framework, the 10 design principles of good design, and importantly, the context where it sits. For these reasons, we respectfully request council to uphold the officer's recommendation and approve the proposed development. Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle. I do appreciate that you've put forward quite a comprehensive submission by email with photos as well. So thanks very much for that. Thank you. Are there any further speakers this evening? Okay, thank you all very much for your comments and questions. We have also received some written questions and comments. So we did receive from Daniela Mudja, who has presented, and also from Murray Slythe, who presented this evening, as well as some questions from Dudley Meyer and a message of support from Andrew Kalis in relation to the Pickle District planning framework. Item 4, applications for leave of absence. We do have 2 requests this evening. The first is from Councillor Alex Castle, requesting a leave of absence from the 1st to the 8th of October for personal reasons. Can I have a mover and seconder to adopt the request? Moved by Councillor Hallett, seconded by Councillor Wallace. All those in favour? Declare that carried. And the second request is from Councillor Dan Loden for the 12th of September to the 8th of October, inclusive for personal reasons. Can I please have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Castle, seconded by Councillor Wallace. All those in favour? I declare the request carried.
Sorry, Mayor Cole, could I make an additional request for leave?
Sure.
The 28th of August through the 17th of September. For personal reasons. Being a holiday.
Yep, it's always good to have a break. Okay, so I think that's good. We've got yeah, I think this is sort of planned quite well between the 3 of you in an unplanned fashion. Yeah. All right, so we have a third request, and this is from Councillor Ashley Wallace for the 28th of August to the 17th of September for personal reasons. Can I please have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Hallett, seconded by Councillor Castle. All those in favour? I declare the leave carried. Receiving of petitions, deputations and presentations. This evening we do not have any. So we'll move to item 6, the confirmation of minutes, and that is for the meeting of the 25th of July 2023. Can I please have a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes? Moved by Councillor Gontaszewski, seconded by Dan Loden. All those in favour? Declare the minutes carried. Announcements by the presiding member. Well, some of you might have been wondering what you came into this evening when we're all standing in the middle of the room waving purple amendments around. And tonight we are marking Wear It Purple Day, which is happening this Friday. We are very supportive of this day, which particularly happens in many of our local high schools as well as universities, because it's about supporting young people to feel comfortable in who they are as rainbow young people, with a support that really focuses around raising awareness, providing opportunity for young people to develop their skills and expand their networks, and also to provide safe and supportive environments. So each year on Wear It Purple Day, we mark the day, and we are also having an event this week where we have a lived experience talk from a young person coming to share their story with us, and that is Ali Messenger. And we do have tickets available online. It is tomorrow, but please feel free to join us if you would like to be part of that. Now, CEO will move to declarations of interest, please.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. The same declarations of interest as per the briefing agenda last week. The first from Councillor Gontaszewski. A proximity interest in relation to item 9.4, outcomes of advertising Brookman and Moyer Streets Heritage Area Guidelines, noting that Councillor Gontaszewski resides adjacent to the Highgate Design Guidelines area that is proposed to be revoked. Councillor Gontaszewski is not seeking approval to participate in the debate, nor to remain in the chambers, nor vote in the matter. And I declared a financial interest in relation to item 18.1, the annual CEO performance review and KPIs, noting that the item includes the annual review of my remuneration package. And I can leave the council chambers if council so wishes. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Are there any additional declarations of interest for this evening's agenda? Okay, thank you very much. So we'll now see which items have already been pulled out for debate this evening. So the items that have been raised by members of the public gallery are items 10.2, 10.4, 9.5, 12.1 and 9.1. We will also have to deal with 9.4, given that Councillor Gontaszewski has a proximity interest. Just noting that 9.10 has been removed from the agenda. And in relation to 12.3, I just wanted to ask whether there is anyone who's willing to nominate for the position on the JDAP as a alternate member. Councillor Castle is nominating herself. Are there any other nominees? Because if there are, we will go to this item and debate it. But if it's simply one council member nominating, then we can adopt it with that councillor's name attached to the motion. Are there any other nominees? I think it's yours, Councillor Castle. So if we could then deal with 12.3 on block, but with Councillor Castle added to the resolution. In addition to those items, councillors, are there other items you wish to raise? Councillor Hallett.
11.5.
Thank you. Councillor Castle, Councillor Wallace, Councillor Warner.
9.7, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Loden, Councillor Alexander, Councillor Gontaszewski. Okay, I'm just going to check. I think that was all. I just wanted to make sure that we have. Yep, that's fine. Thank you very much. I'll just liaise with the CEO over the en bloc items. And also just in relation to item 17.1, do councillors wish to discuss and debate that item? Or are you happy with it as recommended? The confidential item, anyone wish to call that out? Okay, that can be moved on block as well. On block.
Through Mayor Cole, I'll call out the item numbers proposed to be moved en bloc, which include items 9.2, 9.3, 9.6, 9.8, 9.9, 9.11, 10.1, 10.5, 10.6, 11.1, 11.2, 11.3, 11.4, 12.2, and 12.3.
And 17.1. That's absolute majority, so my apologies. Absolute majority on 17.1. Okay. Okay, can I please have a mover and seconder for the en bloc items? Moved by Councillor Loden, seconded by Councillor Wallace. All those in favour? Declare the en bloc items carried. Okay, so we move through business in the order that they have, the items that have been raised first by members of the public gallery. So the first item on the agenda that was raised this evening is item 10.2, Harold Street Black Spot Project. Can I have a mover and seconder for the item, please? Moved by Councillor Loden, seconded by Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm supportive of this project and thank you from the comments from the gallery there. it is one of the challenges we have on council is having a strategic approach to things, but also then addressing specific issues at the same time. So I think this strikes a good balance of this opportunity around addressing these issues on a precinct-wide approach, but also dealing with this specific issue as well. So I'm supportive, and particularly of recommendation 3. I'm also would say that I am very supportive of the idea of encouraging cars to drive on the main thoroughfares rather than through our back streets. So anything that proceeds us in that general direction is something that I see as a positive. Thank you.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question in relation to item 1 of the recommendation. The basis of this recommendation is that we have current funding for the Black Spot project and that's already been extended until December of this year. My question is, if we don't proceed now with this, what's the impact on that funding in the short term?
Through the chair, the funding will likely go back to main roads and the project will be unable to be completed before December.
And if that were to happen, would we still be eligible to reapply for that funding in the future? Would we still meet the threshold?
Through the chair, yes, we would. It would take at least 2 years' time. So it would be applied for in July 2024 for delivery in 25-26 financial year.
Councillor Castle, are you still asking questions? Okay, Councillor Gontaszewski.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. I don't support this recommendation at this time. I appreciate that it's very challenging for administration when we have safety data that comes forward that potentially indicates some safety issues. However, I think that as we've discussed through the briefing and through this process so far, there is more than one street that has safety issues here. On the basis of the data that has been provided in between briefing and meeting, I have real concerns around implementing a treatment at this intersection now that then creates or worsens the safety issues that are experienced at other intersections in the parallel streets. I also am concerned that if I was to look at the broad criteria for black spot funding, which is 3 casualties in the last 5 years, that I don't believe this intersection really currently qualifies for that funding. Now, noting that black spot funding can be used to head off issues in the future. So again, I don't have any concerns with this coming forward. It is just about whether it is appropriate to intervene now on the basis of a current safety risk and the risks that could be created or worsened onto surrounding streets. So I have real concerns about diverting traffic to Chatsworth Street. Anyone that lives in Highgate knows that there's beautiful houses there, but it's bonkers for parking and cars. I think Broome Street's also a shocking intersection with a dogleg to Chatsworth. And I think, again, if you've got Clarence Street that doglegs to Vincent, they're not great intersections to be moving cars to. So I don't support implementing the turn at the moment. I had thought about proposing an alternative in relation to not proceeding, but to move to a traffic analysis. But I'll be honest, what I think we really need is more in line with our accessible city strategy to look at Beaufort Street to create a slower speed environment that is more pedestrian and cyclist friendly, that assists local businesses by allowing people to move and linger within the precinct, maybe more space for greening and art, rather than just having this sole focus around ensuring the movement of cars. So I don't support this current intervention, and I would probably prefer an alternate that was along the lines of preparing a report to council on the options to slow speed, increase pedestrian and cyclist safety in line with the principles of the accessible city strategy for Beaufort Street in Highgate and Mount Lawley. That was just something I just took notes on then. Just in relation to what has been raised by Louise in the gallery around considering the request from residents around the Harold Street one way. I think from I would probably support consultation with surrounding businesses and the primary school on that regard, but I don't feel comfortable in proceeding with that at this point in time. But I understand that that is a separate request. And if administration has noted that there was 12 crashes on that street in a recent reporting period, don't know the exact dates, I think it's something we could certainly consult with businesses and school around, noting that residents have already indicated their support. I think that's all I had to say on that one. But yeah, thank you to administration for the data that's been provided to date. Just not enough to get me across the line on this one.
Councillors, look, I'll speak because I tend to agree with Councillor Gontaszewski. I think that what we're saying is when we put in place traffic interventions that alter traffic flow and see a diversion of traffic to other streets, I think our community is really starting to speak up quite strongly on these issues and feeling a little bit frustrated about the types of strategies that we're looking to adopt. When you're dealing with black spot, you always must contemplate the safety issues as, you know, a primary fundamental rationale as why you're actually doing this. And I think there's been a lot of discussion about how many accidents and what types of accidents and do they meet the thresholds, because I think the predominant type of accident has been vehicle damage. Not that that is in and of itself, that is also a bad thing. So I'm not saying that that's okay. But I do think that when you're dealing with the fact that Harold Street is a local distributor between Beaufort and Lord, and that we're also identifying that at the other end of Harold Street, where you're going into a much faster traffic environment onto Lord Street, that is also a black spot issue and that potentially needs to also be treated, you start to have impacts on local distributors that are key streets through your suburbs. So I do tend to agree that we really need to probably come at this a little bit differently. So rather than looking at treating the traffic turning into across Beaufort Street, that we could really do with looking at Beaufort Street itself more closely. Beaufort Street is a 40-kilometre slow speed zone, not at all times. And I think that's one place that we could start, that we, need to look at the fact that our other town centres are permanent 40K zones and Beaufort Street isn't. The recent traffic treatments on Cambridge Street are really interesting in terms of the way that they are treating that street and producing significant islands that really look like that enhanced pedestrian amenity. So I know, look, there's been significant feedback from the community that they're not in favour of this treatment. I think we do need to do something, but I think that what Councillor Gontaszewski is talking about is heading in the right direction, and I would support an alternate of the type that you've proposed, Councillor Gontaszewski, because I think that then does look at Beaufort Street. And one of the issues that we hear from Beaufort Street is that, people do want to have pedestrian passage across the street, that they want it to be a slow speed environment, they want it to be bike and pedestrian friendly. It is a key town centre. It does have the bus lanes, though that presents its own issues. But I'd much prefer that we actually address the issue of Beaufort Street more comprehensively than treating these turns in and over Beaufort Street and in effect really start to turn a local distributor road into not a local distributor road anymore. So I don't support the recommendation as it stands, and I'd like to come at this from a completely different perspective where we really analyse Beaufort Street and try to bring some of the thinking of the accessible strategy to that thinking. Councillors? Councillor Warner?
Thank you. Like yourself and Councillor Gontaszewski, I also don't support this amendment, this recommendation. Just basically based on the resident feedback we've got and my own experience of actually sitting at this intersection for quite some time and watching the world go by, I really think this is just going to be passing the problem on just to the next street corner and so forth, which is really just not going to solve any problem here. So I really appreciate the the idea of maybe looking at it from the Beaufort Street perspective, and I think that might be definitely the way to go. Basically, and I'd also be very interested in seeing what consultation we could get with the one-way street in the western part of Harold, considering that there is the primary school there and that has other implications. So I'd really be keen to get their feedback on that. But thank you. But yeah, I do not support this.
Councillors, any further debate? Okay, I'll put the motion before you to approve the black spot treatment. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that lost with councillor Loden backing himself 100%. Good on you. Administration's got your back, councillor Loden. Councillor Gontaszewski, do you have an alternate to propose?
I will say some words and then I'd be very grateful for administration's advice on them. Just that it would be leaving, item 1, that council not supports or does not support the progression of the approved Main Roads WA funded black spot project for the intersection of Harold Street and Beaufort Street, Mount Lawley. That number 2, that council requests the CEO prepare a report on options to slow speed and increase pedestrian and cyclist safety on Beaufort Street, including engagement with stakeholders such as the town team, the Beaufort Street Network, place management and main roads. And I haven't put a date on that, but I guess that would be part of my question. And then requests that council consult with residents, school and surrounding businesses on the proposal to make Harold Street west of Beaufort Street a one-way street, and present a report back to council with the results of this consultation.
Manager, do you wish to give an indication of a time frame on that sort of body of work?
Through the chair, I would need to look at our capital projects we have this year and just planning resources to make sure we've enough resources allocated to them. This would be an extra piece of work. I would suggest maybe towards March 2024 to get a report back to council, because it would be a substantial amount of work to gather this information.
Could I just ask a question? I guess my intention with this is possibly that this is definitely an infrastructure project, but also would potentially have quite a significant place component, and just administration's commentary in relation to resourcing as to the capacity of place to be involved in such a project as well.
Through you, Mayor Cole, that wouldn't be an issue for the place team to meet that March timeframe.
Wendy, have you got everything that you need there, or do you need any element repeated? And we're also looking at an inclusion of a March 2024 timeframe for the report. I've got no chance of reading that from here. Thank you, Wendy.
I'm just requesting to add pedestrian, cyclist and vehicle safety, I guess, because the whole thing was about cars.
Councillor Gontaszewski, have you had a chance to review that and are you satisfied?
I think that the March 2024 timeline would be for item 2. I think I guess my view would be that potentially the consultation in relation to Harold Street One Way might not need to align with that timeline. And I'd guess I'd be grateful for advice on that.
In relation to that as well, though, would it be for just whilst you're seeking advice on that, would it be better from administration's perspective to deal with the two as one piece of work? So you can consider them both together? Okay, so the alignment of timeframes is important. Yep, okay.
I'm happy with that.
Okay, is there a seconder for this alternate motion? Seconded by Councillor Warner. Councillor Gontaszewski. Do you wish to add to your previous commentary?
Just to say, I think that this is something that I think really does align with our strategic position in relation to place management and having an accessible city, and has been something I think that when we developed our accessible city strategy was something that we considered that this particular neighbourhood has unique challenges in relation to the movement of vehicles, and also wanting to create a really welcoming place for residents and visitors. So I would hope that this could be the start of that piece of work. I guess I know that some years ago there was some uni students that did some good work here, so it might even be about revisiting some of that sort of work that came out of that project, and engaging with the town team as well. They were involved in that. That would be a good place to start too.
Councillor Warner.
Not really much more to add to anything that Councillor Gontaszewski says. She says it also well, but I'm really impressed that we can actually maybe take it this step forward, and I think that's actually addressing the issues properly. So I'm really proud of that. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Anything further on the alternate recommendation? I fully support this approach. I think this is has the potential to address many of the issues that we've been trying to address on Beaufort Street over some time. And I look forward to working, mate, this is beyond my time, but I look forward to, as an interested resident, seeing the results of this body of work and some improvements on Beaufort Street. Any further comments? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Okay, the next item that we're dealing with this evening is item 10.4, which is the tender for the e-scooter shared scheme trial. Please note that the recommendation was updated in between the briefing and tonight's council meeting to reflect that it can have the potential to tie in with the City of Perth's trial timeframe. Can I have a mover and seconder for this item, please? Moved by Councillor Loden, seconded by Councillor Wallace.
Hopefully I go better the second time round. So I'm supportive of this proposal. I did want to ask a question just about the specific query with the safety around Britannia, but I guess maybe the opportunity around geofencing. Is there an opportunity to include geofencing, not just of Britannia, but other locations? And is that part of what we'll be looking to do as through this tender process?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
I guess, do we need an amendment to specify that council would like to see areas of public open space that are used for recreation defined as not part of to be specifically defined to not have a geofence, or to have a geofenced area around it?
Can I just say, based on City of Perth's experience, I've had to sort of go into this in some detail because there's lots of different areas that you might want a geofence, including town areas of the town centre. We've got al fresco dining, etc. So it's quite an extensive body of work. I think it's pretty clear that we wouldn't want them in Hyde Park, for example. But CEO, my view would be that that's quite a detailed process to earmark all the geofenced areas. but I might just see what the CEO has to say.
Through you, Mayor Cole, in practice would work with both providers and adjust the settings potentially on a daily and weekly basis as they're rolled out to make sure they're being used in the most the least sensitive and the most obvious areas, so we can make those adjustments with the providers on a daily basis. And that'll largely be done in response to complaints. If we're getting complaints about these scooters being used in areas which our residents and community don't think they are appropriate.
And so I guess from administration's perspective, the feedback that has been received to date about Britannia and then other locations like that, is that sufficient information for you guys that you would use that as a basis to geofence those areas as well as others? Because I similarly don't want to try and go and create a list of all these places. There's a logic to it, that in an implicit framework you'd use to do that, I assume.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. And we're working with other local councils such as the City of Perth, City of Stirling, to find out what these problem areas are, and we'll sit down with the two proponents and detail where these geofences will go.
Thank you. I recognise this is not related to the scooter specifically, but the query was raised about adding signage to Britannia, and I was just seeking administration's comments on that for the benefit of the gallery.
Through the chair, one of the recommendations that came out of the annual electors meeting was to investigate how we can manage the multiple users of certain routes within Britannia. That's still proceeding, and signage can be part of that consideration. So part of the investigation in how we can manage that space.
Thank you. I do have an amendment, but I'll let the seconder speak.
Who was the seconder? Councillor Wallace, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Cole. Look, I'm super excited about this one. It was disappointing that we weren't able to go in with the City of Perth when they undertook their e-scooter process, but I guess you could view that maybe as a trial to our trial. I guess my observations working in the city around the City of Perth's trial is that the scooters are generally used pretty respectfully, quite infrequently as well, but I think the controls that they had around them around parking within designated areas have really reduced the potential amenity impacts of having scooters lying around the suburb. Yeah, I'm just really excited by it. I feel like I had other points, but we'll leave it there. Thanks.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. I have just a question or a clarification arising from the questions in the gallery. In addition to the ability to geofence, am I right in saying that we, with the providers, have the ability to restrict the speed of the scooters overall and in particular areas?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. There is certain speed limits through the code of practice that we would abide by as well, but yet generally we can have that ability to geofence the location and also have impact on how fast these go.
And generally, in my experience, having seen these operate here and in other cities, that most of the hired scooters are limited to a much slower speed than you would see in a privately owned scooter in general, like it's significantly lower. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. I believe it's around 25 kilometers an hour is the maximum speed that these would go.
Thank you. Look, I definitely take the point that there are some areas that will be more sensitive for this use, and that's something that we're going to be looking at in the next phase of this project, and making sure that it is used in those areas and in the best way for all users of the reserves and our town centres, for example. But I'm supportive of this. I think it's a fantastic way to encourage more people out of their cars and using other forms of transport to get around Vincent and into the City of Perth and Stirling.
Thank you, Councillor Castle. Councillors, any further debate? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Oh, my apologies. Yes, Councillor Loden stopped in the nick of time. There's an amendment on the grey.
On the grey, I won't read the full thing. You can see what's written there in red. It's about allocating reserves, any funds made from this into a reserve.
Yes. Is there a seconder for the amendment on the grey? Seconded by councillor Hallett.
Thank you. So there's a high degree of uncertainty around the revenue that would be earned out of this. I think is probably a reasonable position to take, including all the way down to zero. And what when I look at this is what I would describe as an unsustainable source of funding for the city, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we have to be able to plan accordingly for that. If funds are allocated from this into general rates or the general bucket, then that basically takes out the need for rates. And then the risk comes that if this grows as a thing and then all of a sudden dies because some new fangled technology comes along that means it's no longer required, that revenue will no longer be available to the city, and we'll be faced with a situation where we have to massively increase rates to address for the shortage in the past. So in that context, my take is that these funds should be allocated into reserve, and then we can use those to do specific upgrade initiatives across the city. And if that is $100,000 one year and then $1 million the next year, and it chops and changes all over the place, that doesn't matter because we've got those things allocated against those specific initiatives rather than underpinning funding our staff and maintaining our facilities and all that sort of stuff. In this case, I've suggested that we create a reserve aligned to the accessible city strategy because this is also a transport related activity. And so that fits within that bracket as well. I also suspect that we're going to have a massive increase in requests for the repair of footpaths and so forth across the city because we now have a lot of scooters using those as well, which is good to get those things repaired, but is also a cost for the city as well. So that's a way for any revenue associated with this to then be used to maintain and upgrade those assets as well. That's it. Thank you.
Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. I'm supportive of the amendment. I guess more broadly, I'm a bit dubious about the e-scooter trial, but I would prefer to see some more funding from state government into mass transit rather than privatised or individual transport options. But I wait to see the outcomes of a trial. But I would like to see the funds, I guess, earmarked specifically around pedestrian pathways, because I think that is a space where we could look for some improvement and greater investment.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Loden, I'd just like to say this is a very solid amendment and you have my full support on this one. Thank you for raising this. Councillor Alexander.
Can I just clarify, this is using these on footpaths, isn't it? E-scooters.
In some cases,
Yeah.
that would be the case unless we geofence the footpath if there are issues.
Yeah, okay. No, I'm opposed to them being used on footpaths, sorry.
You're okay. Any further debate? All right, I'll put the amendment to the motion. All those in favour of the amendment? All those against? Declare the amendment carried with councillor Alexander voting against. We're now back to the substantive motion as amended. Is there any further debate? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried with councillor Alexander voting against. All right, so that takes us to the next item that was raised by a member of the public gallery, and that is 9.5 outcomes of advertising Pickle District Planning Framework. Can I have a mover and seconder for this item? And please note the amendment on the pickle. Mover and seconder, please. Moved by councillor Gontaszewski, seconded by councillor Wallace.
I'll let the seconder speak, but I'm happy to move the amendment on the pickle. I guess what I want to say here is that I think that it's really, I'm happy that this is coming forward. I am sort of sad it's come forward now as opposed to a year or two ago. But hopefully this can support the ongoing life of the Pickle District that so many people have worked very hard to create, and it's such a fabulous place.
Okay, I might just go to the manager, welcome manager to the meeting, just so that you can just very briefly outline those not the amendment because we're not there yet, but the changes that were made since this has been advertised to the community around heights.
So we've reduced the permissible heights essentially, or the to what is currently permitted in line with the planning framework, which is 7 stories, so that any height above 7 stories would actually provide developer contributions. We've also placed further emphasis on the provision of cultural infrastructure and space for creatives and artists, so that we've moved the criteria to number 1, and we've also increased the amount of points that a developer would be provided should they provide that type of space for the inhabitants of the area. They're the key changes that we've made in terms of post-briefing. Would you like me to speak to the?
Oh, look, that's okay, because we'll get to the amendment, but I think just to say that probably before the briefing, you would have received an email from John Denaro, who's the chair of the Pickle District, saying that that he did not support the framework as it stood, because he would prefer that there's a much stronger emphasis and on a range of issues. So Georgia and myself met with John Denaro, Linton Parkington, Andrew Kalis, Hayley Parkington, and is it Moira? Come back to that. There was one other, sorry, forgetting one name. So Georgia and I went through the issues that were raised in relation to why the city has adopted a 1% for art policy. If the city was to come into a community benefit where we had a community space provided to the city, that the city would have to retain the ownership of that space, but could go out to us through a sort of tender process to a not-for-profit to run that space on behalf of the city. And we had a long conversation about cultural infrastructure and the preference for any community benefit or % for art contribution to be prioritised towards cultural infrastructure, given that we're talking about this arts district, which is essentially there because you have artists and creative people in built form operating there on a daily basis, and that there would be a preference for that over, say, for example, sculpture, because in order to maintain the integrity and to have that as a cultural and artistic place for people to work, we do need to have bricks and mortar. So that sort of goes to the amendment, which is really about that conversation and strengthening that emphasis on cultural infrastructure. And the Pickle District, both Andrew Kalis and John Denaro had sent both a written statement for this evening and an email which I've circulated to you from John Denaro on the basis of being supportive of that approach. Is there any further debate on the motion, or would anyone like to put the amendment?
Who was the seconder? Sorry. I will now move the amendment on the pickle.
Is there a seconder for the amendment? Seconded by Councillor Hallett.
Look, I think I asked some questions last week at the briefing in relation to the prioritisation of the community benefits, and pleased to see those amendments. And then this just, I think, really makes it clear, like really makes it very clear for both the people who are currently in situ as to what the future vision is, and then also the anyone that's looking to invest and develop within the area, as to how you can make a really positive contribution to I guess the community and the city's vision for what the Pickle District should is and should remain, and what should be emphasised. So very happy to support this amendment.
Councillor Hallett, any further comments? Okay, just to emphasise that the purpose of this amendment was to make sure that this was sort of filtered through the document so that it expresses itself as a defined concept, that it's part of the objectives, that it then talks about what that actually means in the public realm, that it then goes to both contribution through % for art and through developer contributions. So I've circulated this back to the Pickle District, and I believe that we have their support for the framework. And there is recognition that a planning framework can't deliver everything. It can't buy the land and make it be available to artists. It is privately, we're dealing with privately held land holdings here. So we also talked about the fact that planning isn't the solution for everything, that we are seeing some lower scale developments coming through. So there are still challenges ahead. But we discussed the fact that this is a really important foundation to have as a local planning policy that fills a void that currently exists. And I'd just like to compliment the PLACE team on delivering this document. I think it's a really great document, and I think that the level of consultation that's been undertaken and the investment and the interest from the community has been high, and the work alongside the town team has been really strong on this one too. And I think that even when we have disagreements along the way, we have a really productive working relationship where we get together and we discuss it and work through what we can achieve, what might be outside of the planning basket, but where we very much align on values and desires, local government does have limitations, but that I think have aimed as high as we can on this document and done a pretty good job of it. We've leaned into it, and I think this document will be very helpful in the future. Any further commentary? Okay, I'll put the motion. I'll put the amendment first of all. All those in favour of the amendment? That's carried unanimously. Is there any further debate on the substantive motion? I'll put the motion as amended. All those in favour? Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you, Manager. Next item raised was 12.1, which is advertising of amended policy number 4.2.12, advisory groups. Can I have a mover and seconder for this item, please? Moved by Councillor Gontaszewski, seconded by Councillor Hallett.
Look, I asked a few questions on this one last week, and note that it was raised in the public gallery in relation to some of the provisions that were previously in the body of the policy, which are intended to be moved to the terms of reference. Note there was a question in relation to the template terms of reference and whether this could be provided as part of the consultation materials. If I could just get some advice from administration about whether that's intended to be included or feasible.
Through the chair, that's definitely something that we can include in the consultation.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I accepted the rationale from administration last week in relation to why you might want to have specific approaches for each advisory group rather than having things sitting up in a higher policy. So I'm supportive of this going out for advertising as proposed by administration. But yes, if the terms of reference template can be provided, I think that would be useful and encourage some good discussion with the community. That's all I have.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. Agree, happy with it to go out, particularly with the terms of reference included. And just a comment about our advisory groups being incredibly important and insightful contributions to our decision making. And so, I'm not sure how many consultation feedback we will get on this particular consultation process, but it's important that everyone's aware that we do have advisory groups, that they will be calling for nominations post the election, and we encourage people to get involved.
Could I just also make a suggestion that for those advisory groups that are meeting before the consultation closes, that this could be listed as an item for discussion at those advisory groups, so that existing members who've had experiences can provide some feedback through discussion, and if those advisory groups aren't meeting in that intervening period, could they be emailed to provide some experiences back to the city? Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Declare that carried unanimously. That takes us to item 9.1, which is 39 Bondi Street, Mount Hawthorn, proposed 2 group dwellings. Councillor Gontaszewski is moving and seconded by Councillor Wallace.
I won't speak for very long on this. I had considered an alternate I'd requested an alternate be prepared. Over the weekend, I considered the revised elevations that had been provided and the rationale provided by administration in relation to why this is an approvable development, despite the garage widths and street setback issues. I accept the comments from the chamber as well. Thank you, Daniela. That was, and yes, I think street context is really important. And there certainly are circumstances where it may be appropriate to have a very narrow lot subdivision and then still be able to maintain a double garage. I think those circumstances are few and far between. This is one of them. I think I'm satisfied that the garage is ultimately subservient to the dwelling, but due to the slope of the land, note that there is landscaping provided and that there has been a number of iterations of this design, and also note that the streetscape is unusual. But I do think this is something we shouldn't consider lightly, because if this is a position we want to maintain, we're going to have to really be very clear as to which circumstances would qualify for approval and which ones wouldn't, because whilst these subdivisions are being approved, I think that we are likely to see potentially less considered approaches coming forward. And to be honest, if I was a punter, I'd probably have an expectation that if my subdivision got approved, I'd get to have a double garage. So we need to make sure we've got good advice, that advice is provided early and throughout the subdivision process, as well as through development applications. Well, probably said more than I intended, but yes, I'm supportive of the officer recommendation.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. Yeah, look, I've gone back and forth on this one a lot as well. It does, for me, swing on garage width and street setback as well. But yeah, I think our policy around garage width for narrow lots is pretty clear. For lots less than 10 metres, they can't be any wider than 4. And that doesn't mean you can't have 2 cars in a lock-up garage. It just means the configuration of them has to be in front of each other rather than side by side. Having a double garage side by side on this slide, I don't think it's responding to any particular site constraint. I don't think the treatment and integration of it in the building mitigates its impact. So yeah, I don't think I can support it on that basis.
Councillors. Look, I'm happy to speak to this one. We've been through a lot on double garages side by side, and partly there is the subdivision form that the WAPC is approving. I think in this one, really, administration's comment on the purple is a very succinct, very succinct version of the report, and the report is very fulsome. When I have sort of gone over this a few times, the issue for me comes down quite predominantly to the floor level of the proposed garages and the topography of Bondi Street. It really is quite dramatic. If you're really giving this consideration, you should be familiar with Bondi Street, because on one side you're sitting up the hill and you have houses sitting extremely high and proud, and then on the other side you have in some cases these sort of dipping, recessing garages. So it's the most sort of dramatic topography of Mount Hawthorn. It's the Mount of Mount Hawthorn. So when you're just looking at the garage doors and the width, yes, this has similarities to other applications that we've dealt with. But the fact is that it does read somewhat as an undercroft because of there's many diagrams in the report that shows where the line of sight falls, etc. And I think that is a really important consideration in this regard. I also think it's very helpful that the 2 dwellings are differentiated in terms of one having a pitched roof, one being a flat roof. It's not a side-by-side mirrored development, and I think that that's incredibly important. The street setback being compliant is also, a major consideration, and that then allows for that really significant landscape, and talking about 12 trees. So, over time when that vegetation is there, that will really provide some significant screening. But really primarily for me, it comes down to the garages being being almost undercroft in the way in which they address the street. I think that's quite significant. I think also just the pattern of garages and carports along Bondi on that side. We've seen quite a lot of variation on this street. And if members of Bondi Street came and said we'd like to do character retention on this street because of the sort of nature of development and the way that it has been, altered over time on the street, I think that would be, each street has character and you can find it, but it's not a sort of traditional character street that we find in Mount Hawthorn in that way, where you have these sort of intact bungalows. This is quite a lot of two-storey houses along here, quite a lot of differences in terms of the way that building carports and garages are treated. So I think that I'd probably just like to hear from the manager, because we do have quite a few developments under SAT review at the moment. I'd just like to know what your feeling would be, manager, if we were to refuse this, what you sort of think how chances would be if this was to be reviewed.
To you, Mayor Cole, chances through SAT review, I don't think would be particularly strong for all of the reasons that have been discussed tonight, because policy standard is one thing in terms of a deemed to comply pathway, but in considering all of the local housing objectives, it calls upon that objective analysis of the streetscape, the character of that particular setting, as well as the site characteristics. And you talked about the topography of the site and the design response. So all of those are the factors you would need to consider. And on balance, I think it would be unsuccessful. It was challenged through SAT appeal.
Okay. All right. Thank you, manager. So look, I am in support of this approval. Any further debate? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Councillor Wallace voting against, but that has been approved. Thank you. Okay, we still have a few items to go. The next item is 9.7. Oh, sorry, we'll go to 9.4 first. My apologies. I'll go sequentially through the remaining items. So Councillor Gontaszewski, if you would be so kind on your proximity interest. Thank you very much. So 9.4 is dealing with the outcomes of advertising for the Brookman and Moyer Streets Heritage Area Guidelines. Can I have a mover and seconder for this item, please? Moved by Councillor Loden, seconded by Councillor Wallace. Nothing to say? Councillor Wallace? Nothing to add? Does any councillor wish to speak to this item? You look keen, Councillor Hallett.
Just to say, this is, if Hyde Park's the heart of Vincent, this is I haven't thought of another body part, but it's a liver. It's a beautiful part of Vincent, and we've had a few development applications come through to us, which triggered a revisit to the guidelines to ensure that we are, meeting community expectations and protecting this space as much as possible. So I think we landed in a really good place. The guidelines, for me, really capture what's special about Moyer and Brookman. So happy to support it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hallett. Yes, just to add that this is an incredibly unique precinct in the City of Vincent. We're very lucky to have it in our neighbourhood, and I think that, with all of these processes, there has been a lot of community interest, and particularly passionate people who live in Brookman and Moyer and spend a lot of time restoring these homes and making these two streets incredibly special and well maintained. So as you say, a couple of development applications have come up, and I think that, it's really important that we continue to refresh our guidelines and make sure that they address issues as they emerge. So I'm very happy to support these revised area guidelines. Any further comments? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. We can invite Councillor Gontaszewski back. Okay, we are now at item 9.7, outcomes of advertising arts plan. Raised by councillor Warner. Do you wish to move it? Seconded by councillor Loden.
I just wanted to thank admin for the work they've done in updating this arts policy, and I really acknowledge the high level of engagement and community consultation that's gone into this, and sincerely hope that this will guide us to strengthen the opportunities for and the presence of art in Vincent. To define in policy the plan to embed creativity into everything we do is very exciting. Personally, I'm bursting with ideas, and I know that our creative community is absolutely overflowing with ideas. And for arts practitioners and arts enthusiasts, this is a tremendous step that will enable us to share our stories and preserve our culture. So thank you very much.
Thank you, councillor Warner. Was it councillor Hallett? Councillor Loden, my apologies. Nothing to add. Councillors, any further comments? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? I declare that carried. A strong night for our place team in terms of our policies. So that's very well done. Okay, so we're moving out of strategy and development items. All have been dealt with into infrastructure and environment. We have one item remaining, which is 10.3. It's an absolute majority decision required on this one, and that is adoption of the Parking Local Law 2023. Oh, yes, the CEO has just pointed out that manager Georgia Lawrence is heading on to exciting new opportunities at Fremantle Port Authority, where she'll be involved in the urban design element of future Fremantle, which is incredibly exciting. And we just want to wish you all the best, Georgia, because you've been at the City of Vincent for a very, very long time. You've been a core element of our place team. We've loved your passion, your leadership, and the commitment that you've brought to City of Vincent, both as a staff member and as a local resident. And we know that you're very passionate about Beaufort Street and hope to see you out in the neighbourhood, and wish you all the best. And when you've got even more experience, come back to Vincent. Thank you very much, Georgia. All the best. Parking local law. A mover and seconder, please. Moved by councillor Wallace, seconded by councillor Gontaszewski, I think, just with her enthusiasm. Go ahead, councillor Wallace.
It's a good law. It's a great law, and I'm glad that we're putting it forward tonight. Thank you.
Every local government needs a parking local law. Councillor Gontaszewski.
Just to echo the statements of councillor Wallace, I'm very happy to support this recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Any further commentary? All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Okay, next item, very exciting, 11.5, dual naming of Wandoulia Banks Reserve. Was this pulled forward by yourself, councillor? Would you like to move it? Moved by councillor Hallett, seconded by councillor Castle.
Thank you. I guess just to flag that this has been a little while coming, but really exciting initiative that's part of our broader reconciliation action plan. We're doing a bunch of different things in the area, but this is, I guess, one of those items that becomes very public and can generate a lot of discussion around our relationship to traditional owners and Noongar people and community more broadly. So I'm really excited to see that this has come forward, and I look forward to hearing community views.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, similarly, I'm very supportive of this and really pleased to see the extensive consultation and the process that's happened already with our board. I don't know how to say it, Boudia group. And I really look forward to this being the first of many that we can consider at the City of Vincent.
Thank you. I did have a question to pose to all. The briefing notes say it is possible to go out with a dual option to the community to seek views on dual naming versus naming outright. I missed the briefing due to illness, but that's something that is possible and could be explored, is my understanding from the responses in the briefing notes. Councillor Oden, you wanted to speak?
Yes, so I'm also very supportive of this. I mean, the feedback from the briefing that I was comfortable was that the dominant position this naming is Wandoulia, which is great because it creates that position of, I guess, dominance of that as a name. And sometimes these things get accused of being symbolic gestures, and I do acknowledge that if all we do is do a bunch of naming things, then that's not really what we're seeking to achieve here. We need to do a depth of other activities, including employment and business opportunities as well. But to me, the real power of this is those conversations that start out of these types of things. And I can already envisage that if this was my local park, I'd have a conversation with my 7-year-old daughter and say, we're going down to Banks Reserve. And she would very promptly and assertively explain to me that this is actually Wandoulia Park, and then probably proceed to tell me a great history about why it's called that and so forth. So it's a powerful education tool for us, which is something that has longevity in our community as well. And we will get to a point in time where this is what it is known as by everybody. And that's how we'll describe it in conversation. And it recognises that connection that the Noongar people in our area have to this specific location, which is of significance to them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so just wondering, so we've in this recommendation, we're approving the proposed dual naming of Wandoulia Banks Reserve for the purpose of advertising. Just wondering if we were to change that recommendation, that to say something like that council approves advertising or for the purpose of consultation, the proposed dual naming of Wandoulia Banks Reserve or change of name, to Wandoulia. Like, I guess, what words would we have to change this recommendation to capture that what we're seeking is to go out to the community with both options to assess where the community's at in terms of their comfort in making a direct transition?
And perhaps in addition to that, I'm assuming that would be an amendment and not an alternate.
Through the mayor, that's correct. You could make that amendment because it's not changing the recommendation, just modifying it.
Okay, and does anyone have a form of words? I did think of emailing you at 4:30 this evening just to suggest that we had a form of words ready, but got a little bit distracted with other matters.
Through the chair, we did put some words together to that effect.
Oh, fabulous. Can you please read that, someone, because I can't see what that says. That council approves the proposed dual naming. No, okay, can someone read that out, please?
Approves the proposed renaming of Banks Reserve to Wandoulia for the purpose of advertising. So that's not doing both options.
I think what the council has, the sort of information that has been sought is that can we actually put this to the community to decide? And based on responses of the community, it's about saying, is it going to be co-named or is it going to be outright named? And actually open that up, because community, when you have consultation provides choice, it's a powerful way to engage people.
Through the chair, apologies, that wasn't the wording that was proposed.
Oh, okay. Well, let's have a go then. If I could suggest that council approves for the purpose of advertising both the proposed dual naming of Wandoulia Banks Reserve and the name, sorry, I can't do it. I'm too tired. Can someone take over?
Through the chair, the council approves the proposed dual naming of Wandoulia Banks Reserve. No. There was something along the lines of proposes to provide a choice between the dual naming or the renaming.
Yes.
I did have that wording in my head and it's gone.
That council approves consulting with the community on the choice of dual naming Wundoolia Banks Reserve or naming Wundoolia Reserve. Does that work for the purpose of advertising? Does that get us where we need to be? It's a bit clumsy.
I would love to move that amendment.
Okay, there's an amendment that's been moved. Is administration manager of governance, you have a suggestion? I hear opinion. We're happy to have proposals if you'd like to.
I'm happy for it to read that council approves consulting with the community on the choice of the proposed of either dual naming of Wandoulia Banks Reserve or renaming Wandoulia Reserve for the purpose of advertising.
Or maybe it needs to say renaming Banks Reserve to Wandoulia Reserve for the purposes of advertising.
Do we need to
say for the purposes of advertising? No, remove for the purposes of advertising, please, Wendy. Are you happy now, Manager of Governance? It's passed the Manager of Governance test, so we're good to go. All right, so that's been moved by Councillor Gontaszewski. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Castle. Any debate on the amendment? No mover, no debate. Councillor Castle. I just think this is great, and Councillor Alexander actually raised this with us. I think that that co-naming is a good way to bring people on the journey, and it might be that that's the community's preference, but equally we might find that the community is ready to start to return places to their Noongar naming. So I think this is a really interesting way to really engage with the community and see where that interest is sitting. It provides options, and I think that, as I mentioned earlier, providing communities options in consultation rather than just asking them about one thing is a really great way to engage. So I think this is a very good position to be in and very much support this amendment. Councillor Alexander, did you want to say anything?
No, I agree with you, Mayor Cole. I think it's good to put it to the community to come back with what they think it should be. And I think the choices given are excellent.
Great, thank you. Any further debate? All right, we'll put the amendment. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We're back to the substantive. Is there any further debate? Okay, we'll put the substantive amendment as substantive motion as amended. All those in favour? Declare that carried. So we have item 11.5. No, we've just done that. We have item 17.1, which is a confidential item remaining. What would normally happen with a confidential item is that would return to read out the resolution of council. Yeah. So we'll need to move into confidential and then return to. All right, so so can I just inquire, because we were sort of considering moving this on block, and there's no problem with going to confidential session if you would like to ask questions on this item, that's completely fine. But given that we had that discussion, I just thought I'd ask, are council members wanting to discuss the item in confidential, or are you at a point where you'd like to move forward with the item? And if that is the case, then we can deal with it in an open session. So if you have any questions or you'd like to debate the item, ask the CEO any questions, ask the CEO CEO performance review panel members any questions, we can go into confidential session. No? Happy to move it as is. Okay, well then, on that basis, could I please have a mover in relation to item 17.1, which is the annual CEO performance review 2022-23 and KPIs for 2023-24. Moved by Councillor Loden, seconded by Councillor Castle. Councillor Loden, wish to say anything? Councillor Castle?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, just want to commend the CEO for a fantastic year and thank you for your service. I think we've seen that what this report reflects is a continued dedication and commitment to Vincent, and it's certainly reflected in the way we're moving forward. So thank you. Look forward to another year.
Thank you, Councillor Castle. Are there any further comments? Well, look, I'd also just like to say thank you to the CEO, to David McLennan. This has been a very positive performance review year. The feedback received and the way in which, you know, we've moved through a lot of the issues this year in terms of dealing with some very significant items on the agenda. I'd just like to commend you in the way that you've tackled those issues and that you've brought the team along with you. And yes, very excited to yeah, well, George, I'm sure George is not leaving because of you, CEO. Anyway, exit interviews are always a useful tool. Perhaps you can, you know, just consider it. But anyway, I've lost my train of thought. But just to say thank you, CEO, on a very strong year, strong performance from you and from the team, because CEO performance review is also about organisational review. So it does trickle down and it's a reflection of all of the team. And one of the things that we were particularly pleased about this year was the delivery of the integrated performance, integrated planning and reporting framework, in terms of the ability that we saw there from the city to be able to deliver the annual budget, the corporate business plan, the long-term financial plan and an underground power model. That was a KPI that you were tasked with, CEO, and that was delivered by the team, by the CFO as well, extremely well. So that was just one example, but yeah, strong year, and it's good that you've signed up for a new contract. Are there any further comments? Okay, then I'll put the motion. All those in favour? And declare that carried. So that was our last item of business this evening. Item 17.1 has been adopted. So I'd like to thank you all for your attendance this evening and declare the meeting closed at 7:36 p.m. Thank you.